Welcome back to Psalms and Coffee. I am your host, Von McGee. I'm so excited to be with you again on this morning. If this is your first time, welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you are returning viewership, we appreciate your support over the last 8 or 9 episodes that we've dropped. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. Send it to your friends, your mama, your auntie. Just send it to everybody. Don't forget to go in the comment sections. Let us know your favorite Psalms that we've covered so far. And if we have not covered a Psalm, go ahead and drop it in the comment box, and we'll get to that Psalm as soon as we can. This morning I have a special guest, a returning guest. He's been with us before, so I had to bring him back again, my brother Fred Jackson. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Fred Jackson. Have a couple of businesses. So one of them is our website business, where we do websites, we do graphic design, we do flyers, intros, outros. You can find us at www.faconceptsllc.com. We also do I guess you can call it a show.
Yep.
On the first and third Tuesday of every month. That's my wife and I. It's called Just Moments. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube. That's where we run live with those shows. So come on in and check us out. Our little motto on that is everyday conversations. So that's all it is. It's just everyday conversations. And some of them have been just fantastic. Matter of fact, it's funny, I was watching one last night with all the couples, and it was just such good relational response. And just, you don't get to see people with this pandemic. And so the idea just to be able just to talk and fellowship, that was so wonderful. So it just shows kind of what our show is all about. So check us out, first and third Tuesday of every month.
Yeah, and I'll be sure to put the links to the YouTube page and the website in the description box below, so you guys can check it at your leisure. They're just moments. It's phenomenal. I tune in every week, so I know that if you guys tune in, you will be blessed as well. Today, I decided to do Psalms 40. No particular reason. Wasn't all being all deep. I just read Psalms 40 and it spoke to me, so I decided, let's dive into Psalms 40 on this morning. Yes, it is 17 verses. I'm only going to read 11, and then we'll just see after that how that goes. Psalms 40. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined to me and heard my cry. He also brought me up out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my steps. He has put a new song in my mouth, praise to our God. Many will see it and fear, and will trust in the Lord. Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust, and does not respect the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. Many, O Lord my God, are your wonderful works which you have done, and your thoughts toward us cannot be recounted to you in order. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered. Sacrifice and offering you did not desire. My ears you have opened. Burnt offerings and sin offerings you did not require. Then I said, behold, I come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me. I delight to do your will, O my God, and your law is within my heart. I have proclaimed the good news of righteousness in the great assembly. Indeed, I do not restrain my lips. O Lord, yourself I know. Oh, you yourself know. I have not hidden your righteousness within my heart. I have declared your faithfulness and your salvation. I have not concealed your loving kindness and your truth and from the great assembly. All right. So Psalms 40 really speaks to me because the very first line of this, he starts out and says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He opens up this psalm, I'm thinking, reflecting from a dark place. And he's summarizing how he waited in that dark place. And he said, I waited patiently. So from here, I gather that there is a contrast of how we can wait. We can wait patiently, or we can wait impatiently.
Right.
And this is what I think David is now beginning to teach us, is that we're gonna wait sometime in our life, but we're either gonna wait patiently or we're gonna wait impatiently.
Right. I look at the word wait in a different way. When you're talking about waiting, that wait also means to serve.
Yeah.
So it's not just the idea that you just, I'm gonna wait, kind of like we were having a conversation earlier talking about these stimulus checks and how we sitting there, we patiently waiting. But in the meantime of waiting, we're still serving, we're still trusting, we're still reflecting on the good things of God. So it's an attitude. And so that's where that patiently comes in.
Yeah.
It's an attitude of how we go about waiting, that we continue to serve and we continue to trust that what his word says is going to come to pass. But if we're impatient in our waiting and we just throw up our hands and in that waiting we stop serving, then it's going to be a completely different thing that God's going to do.
Yeah, because if we are waiting on God and we're waiting patiently, and like you said, we're serving and we're keeping the faith and we're still believing God and we're keeping our faith, then we have a hope to know that at the end of the wait, God's going to come through. But when we switch to impatient, that means you're now relying on self.
Right.
And so now we try to find our own way out, or we try to find our own solutions. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, every time I try to find my own solution, I end up in a worse spot. I end up worse than what I started because I decided I got impatient. I wasn't going to wait for the Lord to come answer my problems. I'm going to figure out the answer because I feel like the Lord is moving too slow. And even with the pandemic.
I need you to pep this thing up.
Yeah. We had to wait. And we're a year now going into it. And some of us was impatient. Some of us was patient. But for me, I had to learn how to be still and wait patiently on the Lord and find areas to serve.
And when you say that, using the pandemic, I think it's almost an intentional thing that he did to even teach us how to be patient, how to hear his voice, how not to be anxious for anything, So you're right in that sense that as we I'll say it like this. So we always say, the small, or the big things, God, come on, I need you, come on in, God, come in the room, all that stuff. But, the small things we think we got, we can manage, we can handle. But as I heard in an earlier Psalms, that we need to even get down to the small things of God. What do we put on? What do how should we conduct our day? So it doesn't matter the size. It's that we patiently wait on everything of responding to what God says to us.
Yeah. And it's like you said, the small details, the little things in this waiting that's going to determine how we come out. Because there are certain situations we have no control to do but to wait. God can put us in situations where he allows certain things to happen that we have no choice but to wait. And so God is watching us and how are we waiting? Are we waiting patiently? Are we including God on every detail? Okay, God, I don't know how tomorrow is going to turn out, but I know today I'm going to include you so much into my day that I'm going to ask you what I'm going to wear. I'm going to ask you which way do I need to drive home, or God, who do I need to call today? Who do I need to reach out? Or I see a homeless person, God, I want to be open to give that person what I need to do. I need to include God so much into my waiting, into my day, that I'm really relying on God to either give me the answer that I'm looking for or to bring me out.
Right. And it's in that, once again, like we said, trusting, right? So the idea of God telling you to go this direction instead of the normal way that you go home. And it also goes back to that waiting and serving. So you go this direction and maybe you stop by the store and pick up something on the way home. And because you went a different direction, you met somebody in the store that God intentionally put there for you to speak something in their life. And so obedience is so important in serving and waiting, because when we allow God to speak to us and we obey him and we do that serving, then he can allow, or I should say he if he can trust us in the small things, that's what I want to say. If he can trust us in the small things, then he can trust us in the larger things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And in the Greek or the Hebrew translation, it says that I waited and waited, or in my waiting, I waited, or in my hoping, I hoped. And so he's teaching us that in his waiting, he was serving, like you said. Even when in his hoping, knowing that God's going to deliver, he still hoped, which means he never lost the fervor or the tenacity to know that God was going to eventually answer, but I'm not going to sit and do nothing. I'm going to continue to serve God because I know sooner or later he's going to answer.
Right.
And he says, after he waited patiently, the Lord, he says, he inclined to me and heard my cry. I thought that was very interesting because usually when somebody cried, that gets your attention for you to hear. But he predates it and says, he inclined to me and then he heard my cry.
Right.
So I thought maybe God was looking at David, how he was waiting, that caught his attention for him to then notice his cry.
Right.
Could it be that God is watching the posture of our heart to see what our heart is doing in the midst of a trial that we have no control over?
Yeah.
That gets his attention, and then he becomes attentive to the cry from the response. I think that we have to begin to get a right posture in our heart. Then God would be attentive to the cry that comes from the heart.
Yeah, and I think that's that trust in that relationship process of you and God, that, you know, there's, and just like any relationship that you're in, married or whatever, you're trying to develop that and see how a person responds to things that you do, or when they do something, how you respond to them. And so in that scripture, I believe that that's what it is that God wanted to see how he was going to respond in adversity. And so because David was building a relationship with God and not with how he was dealing with circumstances, then God was saying, okay, I see you.
Yeah.
Now we can go further.
Yeah, because the situations in our life happen. Whether you're a child of God or you're not, whether you are anointed or not, trials happen to everybody.
Yes.
It happens to the person that goes to church every day.
Yes.
And it happens to the person who never goes to church.
Right.
And so God is saying, you in this situation, I want to see how you respond to this situation. And for me, it's a maturity check. When I go through something, am I quick to blame God? Oh, God, it's your fault. If you ever did this, this, and that. You know, like, I don't know. Well, God, it's the woman you gave. If you never gave me this woman, I would never be here.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be here.
But my response is how we respond in our waiting shows a reflection of our heart.
Right.
In my waiting, if I'm able to say, you know what, God, yeah, I'm hurt, but I still trust you, God sees that in the heart and he responds to that. And so sometimes trials come into our life just to see where our heart is at. And this trial came into David's life, and in his heart, he said, you know what? I patiently waited on the Lord. He inclined his ear. He bent down his ear to me. He lowered himself to see what was going on. And when in him bowing and leaning his ear to me, he heard my cry. He became attentive to my needs. And then he begins to go in and say, he brought me out of a horrible pit. It just wasn't a pit. It was a horrible pit. He is descriptive to let us know that it was a horrible situation. For instance, like if I'm just responsible for myself, if I don't have no money, it's a bad situation, but I'm only responsible for myself. But if I have mouths to feed, now my situation just went from bad to worse. Now I'm in a horrible situation because now I'm being relied on, not just for myself, but for my family or for things that are around me, my community. And so he is descriptive to say that, man, I was in this horrible pit. And this pit, he didn't say whose fault it was. He didn't say he jumped in the pit or he got pushed in the pit. No matter how you got in the pit, he was in the pit.
Yeah. And I think we all can identify with, as you said, the description, how descriptive it is that we all have at one point or another had an issue or a situation that was dark, and you know, it's like the worst thing that you could probably imagine. Or, you know, maybe some people haven't. You know, it's just like the same thing that, you know, everybody say that they saved or, you know, whatever. But when you're in that place and the only person that you can rely on is God, it changes perspective. And you know, sometimes, I don't want to say, I hate to say it, but I think sometimes God put us in those places when we get beside ourselves. Because it's easy to say, you know, you get in a situation where I'm gonna call so-and-so, see if they can help me out, or, oh man, this is bad, I need help from my dudes or whatever. But when you take all of those other factors out of the way, because there's nothing that any of those people can do to fix that situation, and you just have to rely on God, that starts to set the standard of where is your relationship with him.
And that's key, because that's the place where you have to totally rely on God. He says that it was out of the miry clay. Miry clay is thick mud. And in fact, in this pit, if you're in a pit of miry clay, the more you struggle, the more you sink. You are helpless in a pit that is full of miry clay. It's like sinking sand.
That's a good word. You're helpless.
You're helpless. So if you try to climb out yourself, you go further down.
Right.
So you have to wait patiently for somebody else to come help, because the more you try to do, the deeper you get yourself into that problem. And so David says, not only did I find myself in a pit, but the pit was horrible because it was filled with miry clay. The more I tried to get out, the deeper I sunk. The more I tried to rely on everybody else, the worse that it got. I was in a situation that I could not get myself out of. And I think we've all found situations that we either put ourselves in. I can be first to admit that I put myself in situations that I couldn't get myself out of.
Right.
I had to call somebody else to get me out of. Right. You know that prayer? Lord, if you just get me out of this one, I promise I'll never ever do this again. You know, because we can get ourselves into situations that we can't get ourselves out of.
Right.
And then the flip side is that we can get put in situations that we can't get ourselves out of.
Right.
You know, sometimes we are the recipients of other people's bad decisions, other people's bad choices, other people's negligence. And so it leaves us in a pit that it seems helpless because we're trying to get out of it in our own strength.
Yeah.
But what I love about God is that David said, he brought me out of this pit. He brought me out of this miry clay. When I couldn't get out on my own, he reached down in this pit and he pulled me out of this miry clay, and he put my foot on a rock.
A solid rock.
A solid rock. He gave me a different foundation to stand on.
Yes.
I went from sinking in my problems, sinking in my troubles, to now I'm on a firm, flat, steady foundation.
And understanding, once again, your relationship, that no one else could do it. It's just like Abraham, when they were in the battle and they got all the spoils, and he made it clear that this was God that did this. I'm not giving no credit to nobody else. This is God that did it. And so that's the same for us, that when he delivers us out of something, we don't say, oh, it was my friend that came through at the 12th hour, or it was my cousin that, knocked this person down or whatever, blocked whatever it is. It was God, because that was who you went to. Now, how the result comes out is whatever God sees fit. But it was God that came at that 11th hour to do whatever it is that needed to be done.
Yeah. And one thing about God is that he always takes you out of something and puts you in a better place.
Yes.
He's never delivered anybody from something and put them in a loss or something that was worse than.
Yes.
He puts us in a better place, and he put him on a rock and established his feet. That right there, to go from overnight, you're in a place where you're sinking in a pit, and the more you struggle, the more you sink, and you're on the verge of death, to now being on a steady foundation. And not only that, God establishes David's foot. That gives a testament of how God will treat us, that if we wait patiently on him, and when God delivers, he's going to put us in a better situation than what we just came out of.
So do you think that even increases your level of trust, kind of like a sports team that gets on a roll?
Yeah.
And you get when you're in just dire straits and you get a win, what that feels like, how inside that feels, that you've been on the losing side for so long, and then you get a major win. That just increases, I would hope that it does for some people, that it just increases your hunger to get even more closer to him.
Yeah, definitely. And you get, a deeper appreciation, like it makes you understand that God has your back. Mm-hmm. It makes you appreciative that he didn't leave me like that. And he brought me out, and so now I can trust him even more.
Right.
And then if we build on top of that foundation, then we're able to go higher, because we have a principle to knowing that God delivered me, but he also established me.
Yes.
And so it gives me the idea to know that if I go through another situation, that same God that helped me out of the horrible pit is going to help me in this situation.
Yes, sir.
God gives us a proven track record. I know God is good because I can look back over my life and I can see how many times he's been good to me.
That's that stack on stack. Yeah.
I know God's a healer because I can look back over my life and see how many times he's healed me.
Yes.
So when I get into a situation, it's not a new experience. I can rely on what God has already done for me, so I'm able to build upon that rock that he placed me.
Yes, sir.
Placed me on.
Yes, sir.
Jesus said a good parable in Matthew. He said, a foolish person hears my words and doesn't do them. And so he's like a person who builds his house on the sand. Mm-hmm. And when the rain comes, it washes away because he didn't do what the words I told him to do. But the wise man heard my words and done it. And when the rain comes, the house didn't go nowhere because it was on a solid foundation. When our feet are planted on the rock and we build upon the rock and we do God's word, when the storm comes again, we're not going to sink or we're not going to fly away because we have built our life on a solid foundation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He said, and what I love about this, number 3 is probably one of my favorite verses. He says, and he has put a new song in my mouth. Praise to our God. Many will see it in fear and will trust in the Lord. He has put a new song in my mouth. He's given me something different to talk about now. Like the old way or the old trial is gone now. God has given me, he's restored me. He gives me a new vigor, and now I'm singing a new song. If I have a new song, that means I'm in a new place.
Right.
I have something else now to sing differently about.
Right.
And this song that I'm decided to sing, this new song, is going to be full of God's praises. See, in the pit, I can imagine that, he was worshiping God, but it's a different type of worship when you're in the pit. It's like, Lord, I trust you, but I'm in here.
The song choice might have been different too.
Yeah.
Come Lord now song type of song in the pit.
Like my soul is anchored in you, Lord. But when you outside of the pit, you have a different song.
Right.
When the children of Israel was in Egypt, they cried out to the Lord. God brought them out, and when God brings them across the Red Sea, Miriam sings a song of deliverance, because now they had a song of bondage in Egypt. Now it was a new song.
Yes.
And I believe that God has given us, everybody that's watching here, a new song to sing.
Yes.
This last year has been hard for everybody. We lost jobs, we lost loved ones, we lost opportunities, we couldn't travel. I couldn't go see my parents as much as I wanted to.
Right.
I lost a grandmother last year. I lost an uncle and an auntie this year. we have lost a lot, but I believe that God has given us a new song in 2021 that is going to sing of God's goodness, His mercy, His abundance, His wisdom, His prosperity. I believe God's people are going to flourish in 21. The opportunities that we may have lost in 2020, God's going to bring them back double fold so that it won't be as if we lost anything. The miry clay of the pandemic that we suffered last year, God is bringing us out and putting us on a solid foundation. And I truly believe that this would be a year that His church, His body of believers will sing a new song.
Yes.
That we will be able to sing of God's goodness in every aspect of our lives. Those who don't have jobs, I pray they get jobs. People who need raises, I pray that they get raises. New opportunities, they can go see their family. I believe that God is just going to give us a new song to sing in 2021.
And going back on that solid rock and what you were talking about with the foundation, I put that in this, coming out of the pandemic, that because of those things, because of being in that pit and coming out for some of us and having a different vista view of God and trusting Him, that's how those things will manifest. Because, like you said, now we see things a little different.
Yeah.
I'll be a little transparent without telling some business, but during the pandemic, I feel like that's what God did for me. He showed me the direction I was going. Not saying that anything bad was happening or anything like that, but sometimes you think you're doing what God wants you to do, but you're really doing your own thing.
Yeah.
And so being able to spend time with Him, talk with Him, converse with Him, and shut up and listen, I started seeing a different direction.
Yeah.
And so in that, you build a foundation, but you also start building the blocks around it. And you start building the frame. And so that's what I mean by you getting another vista view of what can be, because of what God shows you.
Yeah.
So I do believe that as people have had this time of being away from other people, not being able to congregate as much, that they focus, their focus changed, and now they're seeing how they can build or have the things that God has been showing them all along, and all the other things that were distractions and things that were confusing them have been moved out of the way.
Yeah, I agree.
So in 2021, you can have more of a fervent purpose. You can have, like you said, now there was a job that maybe you thought that you couldn't do, and God's shown you through your time of spending time with Him who you are and just how great you are, and that you can do all things when you put your trust in Him.
Yeah.
So I see a different mindset for the people of God on this year.
I agree. I want to talk about 4 benefits that comes from waiting on God. The first one, if you guys have your notes, journaling, the first one would be God will lift you out of despair. When you wait on God, He will lift you out of despair. He will set your foot on a rock. Number 2. Number 3, He will give you a firm place to stand. And number 4, He will put a new song of praise in your mouth. The 4 benefits of waiting on the Lord is 1, being lifted out of despair. 2, your foot will be placed on a rock. 3, He will give you a firm place to stand. And 4, He will put a new song of praise in your mouth. These are 4 of the benefits, not the only 4.
Right.
But these are the 4 benefits that come when you directly wait on the Lord. Man, this whole thing is just so good. What I like about this also, He says, blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust. We're going to be blessed when we say, you know what, Lord, I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
In you, I find my trust. And he begins to go through the rest of the Psalms reflecting on, God, I can't even begin to tell you all the things that you have done for me because I would run out of time.
Right.
if we just reflect on how good God has been through us in our lifetime, I think we'll run out of time, paper, and space. But that should just show us how good God has been consistently toward us. It is easy to go through one trial and forget everything that God has already done. But when you can go through this trial and begin to reflect how God has brought you out every other time and time again, it gives you the confidence to know that God's going to show up for me this time.
Right.
God is going to show up for you. I don't care how dark it is. I don't care how hurtful it is. I don't care how despair it is. I don't care who walked away from you. You can rest assured in knowing that God is going to show up for you. He is going to take you out of that horrible pit, and he's going to place your feet up on a rock.
Yes, I think it's, once again, the things that we allow to be distractions, or the small things that we think we've done, but you can go back further than you even know of looking at things and in a sense not understanding how did that happen? How did I get out of that? Or I remember this time, and man, this just happened out of the blue. And I remember I was working for the state agency. I won't say name on camera. And I was talking to one of my coworkers, and he wasn't a believer, and so his thought was, it was just what's the word? Not circumstance, but where it just worked out that way. I can't think of the actual word that I'm thinking of, but he had a situation and it just worked out. And gives no credit to God, but they just call it just kind of a circumstance type of thing. But if you look back at all the things, and you can go back from adulthood to childhood, I think of now when I reflect, I think of so many things that as a teen, and even as somewhere like 10, of things that me and my friends got ourselves into, and we come home and we laugh and joke, man, shoot, we almost got ourselves killed. And not knowing, this is conversation with me and my mom, not knowing that my mom, every time I left the house, she just said a prayer over me. She didn't know where in the world we were. And let me tell you, when I was a kid, all this stuff now of kids staying inside and playing video games and all that stuff. No, we was outside kids. And when I say outside, I lived in the city of Stockton, and a lot of people talk bad about Stockton, but we lived on the south side. We would ride bikes out to the north side. So we were all over town. And the things that happen now with people snatching kids and all that stuff, you just take all these small things and just that's nothing. But when you start piling all that stuff up, and then on top of that, the people that were right next to you that aren't here today, and you're still here, which also means that in that mud pit, and God bringing you out and giving you a foundation, that means that it's for a purpose. There's a purpose on your life for God for him to use you to do something. So when you start piling all that up, man, that's when you should be singing a new song.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think verse 5 says, many, O Lord my God, are your wonderful works. Like, many are your wonderful works. Not just one, or not just two, or not just three. Many are your wonderful works. And we can reflect on all of your wonderful works. I think we got to a great landing spot. I beseech everybody to read all 17 verses. But remember that no matter what pit you find yourself in, God is going to bring us out of that pit. Any closing words?
No, I just say, no matter what the situation is, make sure your foundation is solid with God, and know that he's there for you in every area of your life, and he'll see you through.
Yeah, amen. All right, thank you guys for tuning in to Psalms and Coffee. Please like, subscribe, and comment what you've gotten from this verse. Again, thank you for our special guest,
Thank
Fred
you for
Jackson.
having me, sir. I appreciate it.
Again, his information will be in the description box. You guys have a blessed day.